Elijah Cole dropped to his knees in the snow. 4 bodies lay tangled together at his doorstep. Apache women, sisters by the look of them. The youngest couldn't have been more than 16. Her lips were blue, her chest barely moved. The oldest one lifted her head. Blood ran down her face, freezing before it reached her chin. "Please." Her voice cracked like breaking ice. "Don't let my sisters die. They're all I have left." Elijah had sworn never to care about anyone again. That oath lasted exactly 3 more seconds. My friends, before we continue this journey together, I invite you to subscribe to my channel and follow this story to the very end. Leave a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I want to see how far this tale has traveled. Now let us return to that frozen night when everything changed. The blizzard had been screaming for 2 days straight. Elijah Cole sat alone by the fire, a half-empty whiskey bottle on the table beside him. He hadn't touched it. Hadn't touched much of anything lately. The flames threw shadows across the cabin walls, and in those shadows he sometimes saw her face. Margaret, his wife. Dead 5 years now, along with their daughter Sarah. He closed his eyes. The wind howled louder. Then came the sound. A thump against his door. Weak. Desperate. Elijah didn't move. Could have been anything. A branch? A lost animal? The storm playing tricks. Another thump. Harder this time. He grabbed his rifle and walked to the door. His hand rested on the handle for a long moment. In weather like this, opening that door meant letting in the cold, the snow, and whatever trouble waited on the other side. He opened it anyway. 4 bodies lay huddled on his porch. Women. Young women. Apache by their clothing, or what was left of it. They were wrapped in torn blankets and scraps of deerskin. Nothing that could survive this storm. The one in front lifted her head. She was tall, strong-featured, with dried blood crusted along her hairline. Her dark eyes found his, and in them Elijah saw something he recognized. The look of someone who had already accepted death but wasn't ready to stop fighting. "Please." Her voice was raw, barely a whisper. "My sisters. Help my sisters. I'll do anything." Behind her, 3 other women lay motionless. One of them, the smallest, couldn't have been more than 16. Her lips had turned purple. Frost clung to her eyelashes. Elijah's grip tightened on his rifle. Every instinct told him to close the door. Apache women on a white man's porch in Colorado territory meant trouble. The kind of trouble that got men killed. The kind of trouble that brought questions, suspicion, violence. But then he looked at the youngest one again. Saw how the older woman had positioned her own body to shield her from the wind. Saw the way her frozen hand still clutched her sister's arm, even unconscious. Margaret had held Sarah the same way, the night the fever took them both. "God help me," Elijah muttered. He set down the rifle and stepped into the snow. The oldest sister's name was Aiyana. Elijah learned this as he carried them inside one by one. Aiyana fought to stay conscious, forcing out words between chattering teeth as he dragged her toward the fire. "My name. Aiyana. Sisters. Kaya Nayeli Chenoa." She pointed at each of them with a trembling hand. "Chenoa is youngest. Please. She's only 16. Save your strength." Elijah pulled the last blanket from his bed and wrapped it around Chenoa. The girl didn't stir. "You can tell me everything later." "No." Aiyana grabbed his wrist. Her grip was weak, but her eyes burned fierce. "Need you to understand. We're not criminals. We didn't steal. Didn't kill. We were—" Her voice broke. "Cast out," she finished. "Our own people cast us out to die." Elijah looked at her for a long moment. Then he gently removed her hand from his wrist. "I don't care what you did or didn't do. Right now, I care about getting you warm. Arguments can wait until you're alive enough to have them." He turned back to the fire and began building it higher. The night stretched on forever. Elijah worked without stopping. He boiled water, tore clean cloth for bandages, prepared what little medicine he had. The wound on Aiyana's head needed cleaning. Kaya, the second oldest, had deep cuts on her feet from running through frozen brush. Nayeli, third in line, was burning with fever, her body fighting an infection that had probably started days ago, and Chenoa, the youngest, simply wouldn't wake up. Aiyana watched him tend to each of her sisters. She tried to help, tried to rise, but Elijah pushed her back down every time. "Stay still. I can help. I'm stronger than I look. You've got a head wound that's still bleeding. You pass out. I'll have 4 unconscious women instead of 3. Not helpful." She glared at him, but she stopped trying to get up. As the hours passed and the fire-burned steady color began returning to their faces, Kaya stirred first, her eyes fluttering open to stare at the unfamiliar ceiling. "Where?" She tried to sit up and gasped in pain. "Easy." Elijah moved to her side. "Your feet are cut up bad. Gonna take time to heal." "Who are you?" Kaya's voice was sharp, suspicious. She looked around wildly until she found Aiyana. "Sister, are you—" "I'm here." Aiyana reached out and took her hand. "We're safe. This man, he took us in." Kaya turned to stare at Elijah. Her eyes narrowed. "Why?" It was a fair question. A white rancher in Colorado Territory had no business helping Apache women. The smart thing, the safe thing, would have been to leave them on the porch and pretend he never heard the knock. Elijah didn't answer right away. He moved to check on Nayeli's fever, pressing his hand to her forehead. "Because the storm would have killed you by morning," he finally said. "And I've seen enough death to last several lifetimes." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got." Kaya opened her mouth to argue, but Aiyana squeezed her hand. "Let it be, sister. For now." Dawn came gray and cold. The storm had eased, but snow still fell in lazy spirals outside the frost-covered windows. Inside the cabin, warmth had finally won its battle against the chill. Nayeli woke next, her fever breaking sometime in the early hours. She was quieter than Kaya, more watchful. She observed everything, said nothing, her dark eyes tracking Elijah's movements, like a hawk watching a potential threat. Chenoa still hadn't woken. Aiyana sat beside her youngest sister, holding her hand, whispering words Elijah couldn't understand. Prayers, maybe, or promises. The kind of things people said when they were afraid they'd never get another chance. "She's breathing stronger." Elijah set a cup of hot broth beside Aiyana. "That's a good sign. She's always been the fragile one." Aiyana's voice was hollow. "The others used to tease her. Said she had bird bones. Said a strong wind could carry her away." "Looks like a strong wind tried. She's still here." Aiyana looked up at him. In the gray morning light, he could see how young she actually was. Mid-20s maybe. Not much older than Sarah would have been if Sarah had lived. "Why do you talk to us like we're people?" The question caught him off guard. "What else would I talk to you like? Animals, savages. That's what most white men see when they look at us." Elijah was quiet for a moment. He pulled a chair closer to the fire and sat down heavily, suddenly feeling every one of his 48 years. "I spent 3 years in the war," he said. "Saw men do things to each other that'd make your worst nightmares look tame. White men, civilized men. Men who went to church every Sunday and quoted scripture while they butchered their brothers." He stared into the flames. "After that, I stopped believing the color of a man's skin told you anything about what lived in his heart." Aiyana said nothing, but something in her expression shifted. The wall behind her eyes, the one that had been up since the moment he opened his door, cracked just slightly. By midday, Chenoa opened her eyes. She woke screaming. "No, no, please don't leave me! Aiyana! I'm here!" Aiyana was at her side, instantly gathering the girl into her arms. "I'm here, little one. I'm here. You're safe." Chenoa clung to her sister, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. Kaya and Nayeli gathered close, forming a protective circle around the youngest, their hands touching their voices, murmuring soft reassurances. Elijah stepped back. This wasn't his moment. But as he watched the four sisters hold each other, something twisted in his chest. An old pain never quite healed. He remembered holding Sarah the same way the night the fever first took hold. Remembered promising her that everything would be all right. He'd been lying, and some part of him had known it even then. "Mister?" He looked up. Chenoa was watching him over Aiyana's shoulder. Her eyes were red and swollen, but they were clear. Alert. "Thank you," she whispered, "for not leaving us outside." Elijah nodded once. His throat felt too tight for words. That afternoon, the sisters ate their first real meal in what Aiyana later told him had been 4 days. Venison stew, leftover cornbread, dried apples. Nothing fancy, but they ate like it was a feast prepared by angels. Slowly, Elijah watched Kaya shovel food into her mouth. "You eat too fast after starving, you'll make yourself sick." "Don't care." Kaya spoke through a mouthful of bread. "If I die from eating too much, at least I die happy." Nayeli cracked a small smile. It was the first expression Elijah had seen on her face, besides suspicion. "You should listen to him, sister. He hasn't steered us wrong yet." "Yet." Kaya pointed her spoon at Elijah. "I'm still deciding about you, white man." "Fair enough." After the meal, when the dishes had been cleared and the fire built up again, Aiyana finally told him the truth. "We were meant to marry the chief." Elijah raised an eyebrow. "All 4 of you?" "It's our way, or it was." Aiyana stared at the flames. Chief Blackhawk was old, powerful. He wanted young wives who could give him strong sons, secure his legacy. Our father owed him a great debt, and we were the payment. "Your own father sold you." "Our father died 2 winters ago. The debt passed to us." Aiyana's voice hardened. "Blackhawk took us into his lodge, all 4 of us. But months passed, and none of us conceived. His medicine man said we were cursed, said our wombs were barren, said we brought bad luck to the tribe." Kaya slammed her hand against the floor. "Lies, all lies. The old man's seed was weak, not our bodies, but no one would say that to the chief's face. So they blamed you instead," Elijah said quietly. Aiyana nodded. 3 days ago, Blackhawk ordered us cast out, said we weren't worthy of the tribe's protection. They drove us into the mountains with nothing but the clothes on our backs. The storm came that night. We should have died." Nayeli's voice was soft, matter-of-fact. "We walked for 2 days. Chenoa collapsed first. Then Kaya's feet gave out. We dragged ourselves as far as we could, and then we found your door." Chenoa finished. Her voice was small, trembling. "We thought we were going to die on your porch. We thought—" She couldn't finish. Elijah stood and walked to the window. Outside, the snow had finally stopped. The world lay white and silent and cold. "You didn't die," he said. "You're here, and as long as you're under my roof, no one's casting you out of anywhere." "You don't know what you're saying." Aiyana rose to her feet, her expression desperate. "If people find out you're sheltering us, Apache women, they'll come for you. They'll call you a savage lover. They'll burn your house, steal your cattle, maybe worse. We're not worth that kind of trouble." Elijah turned to face her. "Let me tell you something, Miss Aiyana. 5 years ago, I had a wife and a daughter, Margaret and Sarah. They were everything good in my life, everything worth living for. They caught a fever, and I rode 3 days through a storm just like this one to find a doctor. By the time I got back, they were already cold." His voice didn't waver. His eyes didn't leave hers. "I've spent 5 years wondering what I should have done different. 5 years living with ghosts. 5 years telling myself that caring about people only leads to losing them. And then you showed up on my doorstep, and you know what I thought?" Aiyana shook her head. "I thought, here's God giving me another chance. Here's 4 souls that need help, and this time I can actually do something." He stepped closer. "So don't you tell me what kind of trouble you're worth. I'll make that decision for myself." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Chenoa started crying again, but differently this time. Not from fear or grief, but from something that looked almost like hope. Kaya wiped her eyes roughly with the back of her hand. "Damn it, white man. You're making us emotional." "My name's Elijah. Elijah Cole." "Fine." Kaya sniffed. "You're making us emotional, Elijah." Despite everything, despite the storm outside and the danger ahead, and the weight of 5 years of grief still pressing on his chest, Elijah felt his lips twitch upward. It wasn't quite a smile, but it was close. Junk. That night, as the 4 sisters slept by the fire, Elijah sat by the window and watched the moon rise over the snow-covered mountains. He'd made a choice today, a dangerous choice, the kind that could cost him everything he had left. But as he listened to the soft breathing of the women he'd saved, he realized something. For the first time in 5 years, his cabin didn't feel like a tomb. It felt like something else entirely. It felt like the beginning. Mount. The next morning brought the first true sunshine in a week. Elijah woke to find Aiyana already up, standing at the window, her face bathed in golden light. She'd found one of his old shirts and wrapped it around herself for warmth. It hung past her knees, making her look almost fragile. But there was nothing fragile about the expression on her face. "Someone's coming." Elijah was on his feet instantly. "How many?" "1 rider, coming from the east." He grabbed his rifle and moved to stand beside her. Sure enough, a single figure on horseback was making its way through the snow, still too far away to identify. "Your sisters." "Still sleeping. I didn't want to wake them until I knew." Elijah checked his rifle. Loaded. Ready. "Get them up. Quietly. Move them to the back room." Aiyana nodded and disappeared. A minute later, Elijah heard soft shuffling as the sisters made their way deeper into the cabin. The rider drew closer. Elijah's grip tightened on his weapon. Then the figure came into clear view, and he let out a breath. "It's just old Tom, town drunk and mail carrier. More harmless than he is useful." He set down the rifle and opened the door, stepping out onto the porch as Tom's horse plodded up to the cabin. "Morning, Eli." Tom waved cheerfully, his red nose suggesting he'd already been at the bottle despite the early hour. "Hell of a storm, weren't it? Thought I'd check if you was still alive out here." "Still breathing, Tom. Barely." "Good. Good." Tom fumbled in his saddlebag and produced a wrinkled envelope. "Got a letter for you. Come all the way from back east. Fancy handwriting, too. Maybe you got yourself a secret admirer." He laughed at his own joke. Elijah didn't. "Thanks, Tom. I'll take it." Sure. Tom handed over the letter, then squinted at the cabin behind Elijah. "Say you got company. Thought I saw movement in your window." Elijah's heart stopped. "Just the wind moving my curtains." "Huh." Tom scratched his chin. "Could have sworn I saw... never mind. Eyes ain't what they used to be. Too much whiskey, wife always said. Course she also said I was a no-good layabout, and look at me now, official mail carrier for the whole territory. You're a credit to the profession, Tom." "Damn right I am." Tom gathered his reins. "Well, I'll leave you to it. Oh, but Eli, word of warning. Jacob Harlan's been asking about you in town, talking about how your land's going to waste, how a proper rancher could make something of it. You know how he gets." Elijah's jaw tightened. "I know. Just thought you should know. Keep your head down, friend." Tom tipped his hat and rode off, his horse's hooves crunching through the snow. Elijah stood on the porch until the rider disappeared over the ridge. Then he went back inside. The 4 sisters were huddled in the doorway of the back room, watching him with wide eyes. "Who was that?" Kaya demanded. "Did he see us? Town mail carrier. No, he didn't see you, but he almost did. Elijah looked at each of them in turn. Aiyana strong and protective. Kaya fierce and suspicious. Nayeli quiet and watchful. Chenoa young and fragile, but somehow still standing. We need to be more careful, he said. No one can know you're here. Not yet. Not until I figure out how to keep you safe. And how do you plan to do that? Aiyana's voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed her fear. You heard him. This Jacob Harlan is already circling. If he finds out about us, then I'll deal with Jacob Harlan. You'll deal with him, one man against a rich rancher with hired guns. Elijah thought about the letter in his hand. Thought about the war he'd fought, the battles he'd survived, the brothers he'd buried. I've faced worse odds, he said quietly. And I'm still here. He walked to the fire and sat down suddenly exhausted. For now we wait. The snow will keep people away for a few more days. We use that time to plan, to heal, to figure out our next move. Aiyana sat down across from him. You keep saying we, like this is your fight too. It is now. Why? Her voice cracked on the word. Why do you care what happens to 4 Apache women you've known for less than 2 days? Elijah looked at her for a long moment. Outside the sun climbed higher, filling the cabin with golden light. Because, he said slowly, for 5 years I've been living like a dead man, going through the motions, waiting for something to give me a reason to care again. He leaned forward. You're that reason. All 4 of you. I don't know how this ends. I don't know if we'll survive what's coming, but I know one thing for certain. What's that? Elijah Cole, lone rancher, broken widower, survivor of war and loss, and 5 long years of grief, looked at the 4 sisters who had stumbled into his life like a miracle wrapped in a blizzard. I'm done being dead, he said. It's time to start living again. And somewhere outside, the wind shifted, carrying with it the faint scent of spring. The days that followed were the quietest Elijah had known in 5 years. But quiet didn't mean peaceful. Quiet meant waiting. Quiet meant watching. Quiet meant 4 women learning to trust a stranger, while that stranger learned to remember what it felt like to have people in his home again. On the 3rd morning, Elijah woke to the smell of cooking. He sat up fast, his hand reaching for the rifle, before his mind caught up with his instincts. Then he heard humming. Soft, low, unfamiliar. He followed the sound to the kitchen. Aiyana stood at the stove stirring something in his old iron pot. She'd braided her hair back, and the wound on her forehead had started to scab over. She looked stronger today, more alive. You're up early, Elijah said. Aiyana didn't turn around. I couldn't sleep. Figured I might as well make myself useful. You don't have to earn your keep here. Yes, I do. Now she turned, and her eyes were fierce. My sisters and I aren't charity cases. We work for what we have, always will. Elijah held up his hands. Didn't mean it like that. I know. Her expression softened slightly. I'm sorry. I'm not used to this kindness without conditions. The words hung in the air between them. Elijah didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. He just walked to the table and sat down. Aiyana ladled stew into a bowl and set it in front of him. Their fingers brushed. Neither of them mentioned it. How are your sisters? Healing. Aiyana sat across from him. Kaya's feet are still bad, but she can walk short distances now. Nayeli's fever broke completely. And Chenoa. She paused. Chenoa hasn't spoken since yesterday morning. She just sits by the window and stares at the snow. Elijah's chest tightened. She's been through a lot. We all have. But Chenoa, she was supposed to be married this spring, to a young warrior named Running Deer. They'd been in love since childhood. When Black Hawk took us, Running Deer tried to fight for her. They beat him so badly he couldn't walk for a month. What happened to him? I don't know. Aiyana's voice cracked. We were driven out before we could find out if he survived. Elijah pushed his bowl aside. Suddenly, he wasn't hungry anymore. I'm sorry. Don't be. You didn't do this to us. No, but I'm still sorry it happened. Aiyana looked at him for a long moment. Something shifted in her expression. Something that looked almost like wonder. You really mean that, don't you? I do. She opened her mouth to respond, but before she could speak, a crash came from the back room. Both of them were on their feet instantly. Chenoa! They burst through the doorway to find Chenoa on the floor, a broken cup scattered around her. She was shaking violently, her arms wrapped around herself, her eyes wide and unseeing. No, please don't make me go back, please. Aiyana dropped to her knees and gathered her sister into her arms. Chenoa, it's me. You're safe. Kaya and Nayeli appeared in the doorway, their faces pale with fear. What happened? Kaya demanded. She's having a panic attack. Nayeli pushed past her sister and knelt beside Chenoa. She had them after our mother died too. Chenoa, listen to my voice. Breathe with me. In and out. In and out. Elijah stepped back, feeling useless. He watched the three sisters surround their youngest, their hands gentle, their voices soft. They moved like a single organism, each one knowing exactly what the others needed. This was family, he realized. This was what he'd lost, what he'd been missing for 5 long years. Slowly, Chenoa's breathing steadied. Her shaking eased. She slumped against Aiyana, exhausted. I saw them, she whispered. In my dream. They were dragging us through the snow again. They were laughing. They said we deserved to die. They said, they were wrong. Aiyana's voice was fierce. They were wrong about everything. We're alive. We're together. And no one is ever going to hurt you again. Chenoa's eyes found Elijah's across the room. Do you promise? The question wasn't directed at Aiyana. It was directed at him. The stranger. The white man who had taken them in for reasons none of them fully understood. Elijah knelt down so he was at her eye level. I promise, he said. On my wife's grave. On my daughter's memory. No one touches you while I'm still breathing. Chenoa stared at him. Then slowly she reached out and took his hand. Okay, she whispered. I believe you. From the doorway, Kaya made a sound that might have been a laugh, or might have been a sob. Well, damn, she said. I guess we're keeping him. The tension broke. Nayeli smiled. Aiyana let out a shaky breath, and Elijah, for the first time in longer than he could remember, felt something warm bloom in his chest. It felt like belonging. 3 more days passed. The snow began to melt. The roads would be clear soon, and with clear roads came travelers, visitors, danger. Elijah knew they couldn't hide forever, but he wasn't ready to face what came next. Not yet. On the 6th night, he sat on the porch watching the stars. The door creaked open behind him. Can't sleep. Aiyana settled onto the bench beside him. She'd wrapped herself in one of his old blankets, and her breath fogged in the cold air. Too much thinking, Elijah admitted. About what? About what happens when the world finds out you're here. Aiyana was quiet for a moment. Are you having second thoughts? No. The answer came immediately, without hesitation. I made my choice. I'm not going back on it. Then what's troubling you? Elijah stared at the mountains. Somewhere out there, beyond those peaks, Jacob Harlan was probably plotting his next move. And beyond him, a whole world that would see 4 Apache women and 1 white rancher as something unnatural, something dangerous, something to be destroyed. I'm troubling me, he finally said. I spent 5 years not caring about anything, not caring if I lived or died, not caring what happened to this land or this cabin or any of it. It was easier that way, safer. And now I care. About you, your sisters, whatever this is that we're building here." He turned to look at her. "Caring is dangerous, Aiyana. Caring means having something to lose." Aiyana held his gaze. In the starlight, her eyes were deep and dark and full of secrets. "My mother used to say that a life without anything to lose isn't a life at all. It's just survival." "Your mother sounds like a wise woman." "She was. She died when I was 15. Fever took her, same as it took your wife and daughter." Elijah's breath caught. "You knew about that. You talk in your sleep." Aiyana's voice was gentle. "Last night you called out for Margaret. Asked her to forgive you." He looked away, his jaw tight. "It wasn't your fault," Aiyana said softly. "Whatever happened, it wasn't your fault. You don't know that. I know that guilt is a poison. It eats you from the inside out until there's nothing left." She reached out and touched his arm. "I know because I've been drinking that same poison for months. Blaming myself for not fighting harder when they took us. For not protecting my sisters better. For being too weak to save us." "You weren't weak. You survived. So did you." The words hit him like a physical blow. He stared at her, this woman he'd known for barely a week, and saw his own pain reflected back at him. His own guilt, his own desperate need to believe that survival meant something. "How do you do it?" he asked. "How do you keep going?" Aiyana's hand tightened on his arm. "I look at my sisters. I see Kaya's stubbornness, Nayeli's quiet strength, Chenoa's hope even after everything they tried to take from her. And I think, these women are counting on me. I can't give up. Not yet. Not while they still need me." She leaned closer. "Maybe that's what you need, Elijah Cole. Someone to fight for. Someone who needs you." "I'm not a hero, Aiyana. I'm just a broken man with a cabin and too many ghosts." "I know." She smiled, and it transformed her face. Made her look younger, softer, beautiful. But broken people can still do unbroken things. That's what makes them brave. Elijah didn't know what to say. So he did the only thing that felt right. He took her hand in his and held it. Not romantically, not possessively. Just held it. Two broken people sharing warmth in the cold night. They sat like that until the stars faded and the first hints of dawn painted the sky. The seventh day brought trouble. Elijah was chopping wood behind the cabin when he heard hoofbeats. Multiple horses, coming fast. He dropped the axe and ran. By the time he reached the front porch, he could see them. 4 riders coming down the mountain road. And at their head, mounted on a gleaming black stallion, rode Jacob Harlan. "Get inside," Elijah said without turning around. He knew Aiyana was behind him, could feel her presence like a second heartbeat. "Get your sisters. Hide in the root cellar. Don't come out until I tell you it's safe." "Elijah. Go. Now." She went. Elijah grabbed his rifle and stepped off the porch. He walked until he was standing in the middle of the road, blocking the path to his cabin. The riders slowed as they approached. Jacob Harlan raised a hand, and they stopped. "Well, well." Harlan's voice was smooth as snake oil. "Elijah Cole, I was starting to think you'd frozen to death in that storm." "Disappointed." Harlan smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Now. Is that any way to greet a neighbor? I came all this way to check on you. Make sure you're all right. The storm hit your part of the valley pretty hard." "I'm fine. You can leave now." Harlan didn't move. His eyes swept over the cabin, taking in every detail. The fresh tracks in the snow, the smoke from the chimney, the curtains that had been pulled shut. "Seems like you've been busy," Harlan said. "Lots of activity for a man who lives alone." "I've been doing repairs. Storm damaged some of the fencing." "Is that so?" Harlan leaned forward in his saddle. "Funny thing, Eli. Old Tom came through town the other day. Said he saw movement in your windows. Said it looked like you might have company." Elijah's grip tightened on his rifle. "Tom's a drunk. Sees things that aren't there." "Maybe." Harlan's smile widened. But I've also been hearing rumors. Stories about Apache women wandering through the mountains, cast out by their tribe apparently, left to die in the snow. He paused, letting the words sink in. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you, Eli? Can't say I do. Can't or won't. Elijah raised his rifle, not pointing it at anyone, just holding it ready. I think it's time you left Harlan. The men behind Harlan shifted. Hands moved toward gun belts. The tension in the air thickened like smoke before a fire. Harlan held up a hand, stopping his men. Easy, boys. We're just having a friendly conversation. He turned back to Elijah. You know, Cole, this land of yours is prime territory. Good water, good grazing. A smart man could turn it into something valuable, something worth fighting for. Is that a threat? It's an observation. Harlan gathered his reins. I've made you fair offers in the past. You've always turned me down. But circumstances change, don't they? A man living alone way out here with no friends, no family, no one to watch his back. He let the sentence hang. Accidents happen. Get off my land. Harlan tipped his hat, still smiling that cold, empty smile. I'll be seeing you, Cole, sooner than you think. He turned his horse and rode away. His men followed. But one of them, a young man with a scar across his cheek, looked back over his shoulder. His eyes found the cabin window, and for just a moment his expression changed. Surprise. Recognition. Then he was gone. Elijah stood in the road until the riders disappeared over the ridge. Then he lowered his rifle and let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Behind him, the cabin door opened. They're gone. He turned. All four sisters stood on the porch. Aiyana in front, her face pale but determined. Kaya beside her, fists clenched. Nayeli watching with those sharp, quiet eyes. And Chenoa hiding behind them, all trembling like a leaf in a storm. For now. He knows. Aiyana's voice was flat. That man. He knows we're here. He suspects. There's a difference. Not for long. Kaya stepped forward. One of his men saw us. I know he did. He looked right at me through the window. Elijah's blood ran cold. You were supposed to stay hidden. We heard shouting. We were scared. Being scared doesn't help if you're dead. The words came out harsher than he intended. Kaya flinched. Aiyana stepped between them. She's right to be scared. We all are. But yelling at each other won't change what happened. She turned to face Elijah fully. What do we do now? It was a simple question, and it deserved a simple answer. But Elijah didn't have one. He stood there looking at these four women who had stumbled into his life and turned everything upside down, and felt the weight of their trust pressing down on him like a mountain. I don't know, he admitted. But I know we can't run. This is my land, my home. I'm not abandoning it. Then we stay and fight. Kaya's eyes lit up with something that looked almost like hope. If it comes to that. It will. Nayeli spoke for the first time, her voice soft but certain. Men like Harlan don't stop. They push and push until they get what they want, or until someone stops them. Then we stop them. Elijah looked at each of them in turn. Together. Chenoa stepped out from behind her sisters. Her hands were still shaking, but her voice was steady. You really think we can win against a man like that? Elijah knelt down so he was at her eye level. I think we don't have a choice. I think running means dying. And I think the five of us are stronger than any of us alone. Chenoa stared at him. Then slowly she nodded. Okay, she whispered. Then we fight. Aiyana placed a hand on her youngest sister's shoulder. Together. Together, Kaya echoed. Together. Nayeli agreed, and Elijah Cole, lone rancher, widower, survivor, looked at the four Apache sisters, who had become his family in the space of a week, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. That night they made plans. Elijah spread a rough map across the table. His land, the surrounding territory, the roads leading to town, the mountains that bordered everything. Harlan owns most of the valley, he explained. His ranch is here to the south. He's got at least 20 men working for him, maybe more. Most of them are hired guns, not real cowboys. And the town? Aiyana leaned over the map, her braid falling across her shoulder. Millbrook. 2 hours ride if the roads are clear. Population of maybe 300. Sheriff's name is Tom Burke. He's fair enough, but he's also getting old and doesn't like trouble. Will he help us? Elijah hesitated. I don't know. White rancher living with Apache women. That's the kind of trouble most folks want to avoid. So we're alone. We're not alone. We have each other. Kaya snorted. 5 against 20. Great odds. I've faced worse. In the war, Elijah nodded. At Gettysburg, we were outnumbered 3-1. Thought we were all going to die, but we held the line. We fought for every inch of ground, and when it was over, we were still standing. What made the difference? Nayeli asked. Belief. Elijah's voice was quiet but firm. We believed in what we were fighting for. We believed in each other. That's worth more than numbers, more than guns, more than anything. The sisters exchanged glances. Teach us, Aiyana said. Teach you what? How to fight, how to shoot, how to defend ourselves. She met his eyes. We're not going to sit here and wait to be saved, Elijah. If trouble comes, we want to face it standing up. Elijah looked at her, at all of them. 4 women who had been thrown away by their own people, who had walked through a blizzard to find a stranger's door, who had every reason to give up but refused. All right, he said. Tomorrow we start training. Chenoa's eyes went wide. Even me. Especially you. Elijah smiled. Something tells me you're tougher than you look. Chenoa blushed. But she smiled too. It was the first real smile he'd seen from her. The next morning came cold and clear. Elijah woke before dawn and found Aiyana already waiting on the porch. She'd found an old pair of his boots too big for her feet and wrapped her hair in a scarf against the wind. Ready? He asked. I've been ready my whole life. They started with rifles. Elijah set up targets at the edge of the clearing. Old bottles, rusted cans, a scarecrow made from a broken chair and some rags. The key is patience, he said, handing Aiyana the rifle. Don't jerk the trigger, squeeze it, smooth and steady, like you're closing your hand around something precious. Aiyana raised the rifle, sighted down the barrel, squeezed. The bottle exploded. Elijah's eyebrows rose. You've done this before. My father taught me when I was young. Before, she trailed off. Before Black Hawk. She nodded, not meeting his eyes. Then show your sisters. They need to learn from someone they trust. By midday, all 4 women were taking turns with the rifle. Kaya was a natural, her fierce energy translating into deadly accuracy. Nayeli was methodical, each shot careful and precise. And Chenoa, despite her shaking hands, managed to hit more targets than she missed. Good, Elijah said as the last bottle shattered. Now we move to something harder. Harder than this. He pulled his pistol from its holster. Close combat. When the enemy is too close for a rifle. When everything happens in seconds instead of minutes. Aiyana's face went pale. You think it will come to that? I think we need to be ready for anything. The afternoon was brutal. Elijah drilled them until their arms ached and their hands blistered. He taught them how to reload under pressure, how to take cover, how to move without being seen. He taught them that fighting wasn't about strength or speed or even skill. It was about will. The will to survive when everything said you should die. By sunset they were exhausted. But they were also different. Harder, sharper, more ready than they'd been that morning. As they walked back to the cabin, Chenoa grabbed Elijah's sleeve. Mr. Cole, just Elijah. She smiled shyly. Elijah, I wanted to say thank you for everything, but especially for today. You did well, Chenoa. I was scared the whole time. That's okay. Brave people aren't people without fear. They're people who keep going even when they're terrified. She considered this. Were you scared in the war? Every single day. But you kept fighting. I did. Why? Elijah looked at the cabin, at the smoke rising from the chimney, at the 4 women who had given him something to live for again. Because some things are worth being scared for. Chenoa nodded slowly. Then without warning she hugged him. Quick and fierce, like a child seeking comfort. Thank you, she whispered, for giving us a home. Before he could respond, she ran ahead to join her sisters. Elijah stood there for a long moment, the echo of her words ringing in his ears. Home. Yes, that's what this was. What it had become. And God help anyone who tried to take it from them. The peace lasted 3 more days. On the 10th morning since the sisters' arrival, Elijah woke to the sound of screaming. He grabbed his rifle and ran outside. At the edge of his property, his fence was burning. Orange flames licked at the wooden posts, sending black smoke spiraling into the morning sky. And nailed to the one section that wasn't on fire was a sign. 2 words painted in dripping red. Savage lovers. Elijah! Aiyana ran up beside him, her face white with terror. The horses! They let our horses out. They're gone. Elijah's jaw tightened. Harlan. What do we do? He stared at the burning fence, at the hateful words, at the message they'd sent. This is just the beginning. We rebuild, he said quietly, and we wait. Wait for what? Elijah turned to look at her. His eyes were hard, determined. For them to make their next move, and when they do, we'll be ready. From the cabin, Kaya's voice rang out. Elijah, Aiyana, someone's coming. They ran back. At the top of the ridge, a single rider was approaching. Not from town, from the mountains. As the figure drew closer, Chenoa gasped. No, it can't be. The rider was young, native. His face was battered, his arm in a rough sling. But his eyes, when they found Chenoa, lit up with desperate hope. Running deer, she breathed. And then she was running toward him, tears streaming down her face, while her sisters watched in stunned silence. The boy she loved, the warrior they'd thought was dead. He'd found her. Chenoa ran through the snow like her life depended on it. Running Deer slid from his horse and caught her in his arms. They held each other so tightly, it seemed like the world might end if they let go. You're alive, Chenoa's voice broke on every word. They told me you were dead. They said the beating killed you. I thought I'd never... Shh. Running Deer pressed his forehead to hers. I'm here. I found you. Nothing else matters. Elijah watched from the porch, his rifle still in his hands. Behind him, the fence continued to burn, sending smoke signals into the morning sky. Aiyana stepped up beside him. Did you know about this boy? She mentioned him. I didn't think he'd actually come. He tracked us through a blizzard, across mountains, with a broken arm. Aiyana's voice was soft. That's not just determination. That's love. Running Deer finally looked up. His eyes found Elijah, and something shifted in his expression. Wariness. Suspicion. The same look Kaya had given him that first night. Who are you? Elijah Cole. This is my land. Why are you helping them? Because they needed help. Running Deer studied him for a long moment. Then he looked at Chenoa, at the cabin behind them, at the sisters gathered on the porch. You're not what I expected. Neither are you. Elijah lowered his rifle. You look like hell, son. When's the last time you ate? Running Deer hesitated. 3 days. Then come inside. We've got stew. The young warrior didn't move. His good arm stayed wrapped around Chenoa, protective, possessive. How do I know this isn't a trap? Kaya stepped forward, hands on her hips. If it was a trap, you'd already be dead. The white man's too stubborn to lie and too soft-hearted to kill anyone who isn't actively trying to murder him. Now get inside before you freeze to death and break my little sister's heart." Running Deer blinked. Chenoa laughed through her tears. "That's Kaya. She's always like this." "Wonderful." But he let Chenoa lead him toward the cabin. As he passed Elijah, he paused. "Thank you for keeping them safe." "Don't thank me yet. Trouble's coming." "I know." Running Deer's jaw tightened. "I saw the burning fence. I saw the sign." "Then you know what we're facing." "I know." The young warrior's eyes were hard. "And I'm not leaving them again." Inside, Nayeli tended to Running Deer's injuries, while Chenoa refused to let go of his hand. The broken arm had been poorly set. 2 of his ribs were cracked. A deep cut on his shoulder had started to fester. "How did you survive?" Nayeli asked as she cleaned the wound. "The beating they gave you should have killed you." "My grandmother hid me, nursed me back to health in secret." Running Deer winced as she applied pressure. "When I was strong enough to travel, she told me where they'd taken the sisters, which direction they'd been driven." "Your grandmother helped you." Aiyana's voice was sharp. "She could have been killed for that. She didn't care. She said—" Running Deer looked at Chenoa. "She said some loves are worth dying for." Chenoa's grip on his hand tightened. "What about Blackhawk? Won't he come after you?" Running Deer's expression darkened. "Blackhawk is dead." The words fell like stones into water. Ripples of shock spread across every face. "Dead." Kaya moved closer. "How?" "His heart gave out 5 days ago. The tribe is in chaos. His sons are fighting over who will be chief. No one's thinking about the women they cast out." Running Deer paused. "That's why I came now, while they're distracted, before someone remembers to look for you." Elijah leaned against the wall, processing this news. "So the tribe won't come for them." "Not likely. At least not soon. But that doesn't mean you're safe." Running Deer turned to face him. "On my way here I passed through the valley. I heard talk about you. About a rancher who's harboring Indian women. The white men are angry." "Let them be angry." "You don't understand. They're not just angry. They're organizing. The man called Harlan, he's telling everyone you're a traitor, that you've taken native wives, that you're planning to lead an uprising." Elijah's blood ran cold. "That's a lie. Lies don't need to be true to kill. They just need to be believed." Aiyana crossed her arms. "How many are we talking about? I counted at least 30 men gathering at Harlan's ranch. Maybe more." 30. Kaya's voice cracked. "Against 6 of us." 5. Running Deer held up his broken arm. "I can barely lift a rifle like this." "Then 5 against 30. Nayeli finished bandaging his shoulder. "Those odds aren't survivable." "They don't have to be." Elijah pushed off the wall. "We're not trying to win a war. We just need to survive long enough for them to give up or make a mistake." "What kind of mistake? The kind that turns the town against them instead of us." Running Deer studied him with new respect. "You've done this before, fought against impossible odds. Once or twice. Did you win?" Elijah thought about Gettysburg, about the men who'd died beside him, about the ones who'd lived. "We survived," he said. "That was enough." That night they held a council. All 6 of them gathered around the table. The map spread between them, candles flickering in the draft from the poorly sealed windows. "Here's what we know." Elijah pointed to various spots on the map. "Harlan controls the valley. He's got 30 men, maybe more. The town is scared of him, which means they won't help us. The sheriff is old and weak, and we've got no way to get more supplies or ammunition without going through territory Harlan controls. So we're trapped." Kaya's voice was flat. "We're positioned. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes." Elijah tapped the cabin on the map. This location isn't random. My grandfather built here because it's defensible. We've got the ridge at our back, the creek on one side, and clear sightlines in every other direction. Anyone who tries to attack us has to come up that road. Which means we can see them coming. Aiyana caught on quick. We can prepare. Exactly. And there's something else. Elijah pulled a folded paper from his pocket. This letter came last week, from an old army friend of mine. He's a federal marshal now working out of Denver, investigating land fraud and corrupt ranchers. Harlan, Nayeli asked. Among others. My friend's been looking for evidence against him for months. If I can get word to him, tell him what Harlan's planning, he might be able to help. Might? Running Deer's voice was skeptical. That's a big risk for a might. It's the only card we've got. How do you plan to reach him? You said yourself Harlan controls the roads. Elijah looked at Aiyana. There's another way. Through the mountains. Dangerous but passable if you know the trails. I know those trails. Aiyana's jaw set. I traveled them as a child. I can make the journey. No. The word came from Running Deer. It's too risky. If they catch you. If we do nothing, they'll kill us all anyway. Aiyana stood. I'm the fastest runner here, the best tracker, and I know those mountains better than anyone. Sister, Kaya started. This isn't a discussion. Aiyana's voice was iron. Someone needs to go. I'm the logical choice. Chenoa rose from her seat and wrapped her arms around her oldest sister. Come back to us. Promise. I promise. Elijah watched this exchange with something twisting in his chest. Something he hadn't felt in a long time. Fear. Not for himself. For her. When do you leave? He asked. Tomorrow, before dawn. I'll travel faster in the dark. I'll pack supplies. Thank you. Aiyana met his eyes. For everything. The words hung between them, heavy with things neither of them could say. The night passed too quickly. Elijah couldn't sleep. He sat on the porch, watching the stars, listening to the wind. The door creaked open. You should be resting. Aiyana settled beside him. Tomorrow will be hard. So will the days after. He turned to look at her. You don't have to do this. We could find another way. There is no other way. You know that as well as I do. I know. I just... He stopped. Started again. I've already lost one family. I can't lose another. The words came out raw, unguarded. He hadn't meant to say them. Aiyana was quiet for a long moment. Is that what we are, family? I don't know what else to call it. She reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were warm against his cold skin. My people believe that family isn't just blood. It's the people who choose you, who fight for you, who refuse to let you go even when everything says they should. What are you saying? I'm saying... She paused. I'm saying I'm not going to die in those mountains, Elijah Cole. I'm going to deliver your message, and I'm going to come back, and when I do, we're going to fight for this place. Together. Elijah's throat tightened. And after, when the fighting's done... Aiyana's eyes found his. In the starlight, they were deep and dark and full of something that looked like hope. After we build something new, something worth living for. She leaned in and pressed a kiss to his cheek. Soft. Brief. A promise. Then she stood and walked back inside. Elijah sat alone in the darkness, his hand pressed to the place where her lips had touched his skin. For the first time in 5 years, he wanted to live, really live. Dawn came gray and cold. Aiyana stood at the edge of the property, a pack on her back. Her father's old rifle slung across her shoulder. Her sisters surrounded her, each one holding on as if they could keep her there through sheer force of will. 3 days, Aiyana said. That's all I need. 3 days there, 3 days back. Hold on until then. We will. Kaya's voice was fierce. But if you're not back in a week, I'm coming after you. I know you will. She hugged each of her sisters. Chenoa cried. Nayeli didn't, but her hands shook. Running Deer stood apart, giving them space, but his eyes were watchful. Finally, Aiyana turned to Elijah. Keep them safe. I will. Keep yourself safe, too. That's harder. She almost smiled. Try anyway. Then she was gone. Walking into the gray morning, disappearing into the trees, climbing toward the mountains that would either save them or swallow her whole. Elijah watched until he couldn't see her anymore. Behind him, Kaya spoke. What now? He turned to face the others. 4 faces looking at him with trust he wasn't sure he deserved. Now we prepare for war. But 2 days passed. 2 days of tension, of watching, of waiting. Elijah drilled the others relentlessly. Running Deer couldn't shoot, but he could strategize. He knew how war parties moved, how they thought. His knowledge was invaluable. They won't come at night, Running Deer said on the second evening. White men are afraid of the dark. They'll attack at dawn, when they think we're sleeping. Then we don't sleep, Kaya said. We take shifts. Agreed. Elijah assigned positions. Kaya on the front porch, Nayeli at the back window, Chenoa in the loft with a clear view of the road. Running Deer would coordinate from the main room, keeping track of everyone's position. What about you? Nayeli asked. I'll be wherever they hit hardest. Night fell. The cabin grew quiet. Each person took their post. And in the darkness, Elijah prayed for the first time in 5 years. Not for victory, not for survival, for Aiyana. The third dawn brought fire. Elijah smelled it before he saw it. Smoke drifting on the wind. Wrong direction to be coming from the cabin. He ran outside. Across the valley, orange light flickered against the gray sky. Not one fire. Multiple fires. Moving closer. They're burning the brush, Running Deer said from behind him. Driving us out like animals. How long before it reaches us? An hour, maybe less. Kaya appeared rifle in hand. We fight through fire now. We fight through whatever they throw at us. Elijah's mind raced. Running Deer, can you ride? Not well, but I can try. Take Chenoa. Get to the creek and follow it north. There's a cave about 2 miles up. Hide there until the fire passes. No. Chenoa's voice rang out sharp. I'm not leaving. Little one, Running Deer started. I said no. Chenoa stepped forward, her whole body trembling, but her eyes fierce. My sisters didn't raise a coward. I'm staying. Elijah looked at her, at this girl who'd been broken and terrified just days ago, who'd barely been able to hold a rifle without shaking. All right, he said. Then we all stay. Together. Nayeli moved to stand beside her youngest sister. Together. Kaya took position on the other side. Together. Running Deer limped forward, taking his place in the line. Together. 5 people. Against fire. Against 30 armed men. Against everything the world wanted to throw at them. Elijah raised his rifle. Then let's give them a fight they'll never forget. The fire reached the edge of the property an hour later, but it didn't spread. The creek on one side and the rocky ridge behind acted as natural fire breaks. The flames licked at the edges, then slowly, reluctantly began to die. Harlan had miscalculated. He doesn't know this land, Running Deer said. He thought the fire would drive us out, force us into the open. Instead, it just announced he's coming. And come he did. Through the smoke riders appeared. 10 at first, then 20, then more. They lined up at the edge of the property just beyond rifle range. Waiting. One rider moved forward. Jacob Harlan mounted on his black stallion, a white flag in his hand. Cole. His voice carried across the distance. This doesn't have to end in blood. Elijah stepped onto the porch. Funny way of showing it, setting fire to my land? That was just a warning, a demonstration. I've got 30 men behind me. You've got what, a cripple and some squaws. Kaya's hand tightened on her rifle. Running Deer placed a calming hand on her arm. What do you want, Harlan? What I've always wanted. Your land. But now I want something else too. Harlan's smile was cruel. I want those Apache women. Bring them out, hand them over, and I'll let you walk away. Simple. And if I refuse, then we burn you out. Kill everyone inside. Claim it was Indians who attacked us. No one will question it. No one will care. Elijah's jaw tightened. You really think you can get away with that? I've gotten away with worse. Harlan leaned forward in his saddle. You've got 1 minute to decide, Cole. 1 minute to choose whether you live or die for a bunch of savages. 60 seconds. Elijah turned and looked at the faces behind him. Kaya fierce and defiant. Nayeli calm and ready. Chenoa scared but standing. Running Deer steady despite his injuries. These people had trusted him with their lives. He wasn't going to betray that trust. He turned back to Harlan. Here's my answer. He raised his rifle and fired. The bullet struck Harlan's horse, sending the animal rearing. Harlan tumbled from the saddle, landing hard in the dirt. For a moment, everything was silent. Then chaos erupted. Harlan's men charged. Elijah fired again, dropping the lead rider. Kaya took down another. Nayeli's shot went wide, but it forced 3 riders to veer off course. Inside! Elijah shouted. Take positions! They scrambled into the cabin, slamming the door behind them. Bullets thudded into the wooden walls. Windows, Elijah directed. Cover every angle. The siege had begun. Hours passed. Harlan's men didn't rush the cabin. They circled instead, taking shots when they saw movement, keeping constant pressure. 3 times small groups tried to approach from different directions. 3 times they were driven back. We're running low on ammunition, Nayeli reported. Maybe 30 rounds left. Conserve. Only shoot when you're sure of a hit. As evening approached, the attacks became less frequent. Harlan's men were tired, frustrated. They hadn't expected real resistance. They'll regroup tonight, Running Deer said. Come back stronger in the morning. Then we need to make tonight count. How? Elijah's mind worked furiously. They couldn't hold out forever. But they didn't need forever. They just needed until Aiyana returned. Until help arrived. If help was coming at all. The thought gnawed at him. What if she hadn't made it? What if she was lying dead somewhere in those mountains? His letter undelivered, their hopes dying with her no. He couldn't think like that. She'd promised to come back. She'd promised. Midnight brought a new threat. Running Deer saw them first. 3 figures moving through the darkness. Not shooting. Carrying something. Torches, he breathed. They're going to burn us out. Elijah moved to the window. Sure enough, orange flames bobbed in the darkness, getting closer. I count 3, maybe 4. I'll take the 2 on the left. Kaya raised her rifle. Wait. Elijah grabbed her arm. Something's wrong. They're too exposed, too obvious. What do you mean? I mean it's a distraction. A crash from the back of the cabin. Chenoa screamed. Elijah spun. 3 of Harlan's men had broken through the rear window while everyone was focused on the front. One of them had Chenoa, a knife to her throat. Nobody move. Running Deer launched himself at the man holding Chenoa, ignoring his broken arm, ignoring everything except the woman he loved. The knife sliced across his shoulder. Blood sprayed. But his tackle knocked the man backward, and Chenoa broke free. Kaya shot one of the other intruders. Nayeli clubbed the third with the butt of her rifle. In seconds, it was over. But Running Deer lay on the floor, blood pooling beneath him. No. Chenoa fell to her knees beside him. No, no, no. It's just a cut. Running Deer's voice was weak but steady. I'll live. You idiot! You could have been killed. Worth it. He managed to smile. You're safe. Nayeli was already working on the wound, tearing cloth for bandages. He's right. It's deep, but it missed anything vital. He'll survive. Chenoa collapsed against him, sobbing with relief. Elijah turned back to the front. Outside, the torchbearers had retreated. Harlan's distraction had failed. But they'd come too close, way too close. We can't survive another night like this, Kaya said quietly. We just can't. I know. So what do we do? Elijah stared into the darkness. We hold on. That's all we can do. We hold on and pray that help is coming. And somewhere in the mountains, a woman ran through the night, carrying hope in her hands. Dawn of the fourth day. Elijah stood on the porch watching the sun rise. His eyes burned from lack of sleep. His hands ached from gripping his rifle. Every muscle in his body screamed for rest, but rest was a luxury they couldn't afford. Behind him, the others stirred. Running Deer was propped against the wall, pale but conscious. Chenoa sat beside him, refusing to leave. Kaya and Nayeli took turns at the windows watching for movement. They're gathering again. Nayeli's voice was flat. More than yesterday. Elijah walked to her position and looked out. She was right. At least 40 riders now. Harlan had called in reinforcements. Final push, he said. They're going to end it today. Can we stop them? He didn't answer. The truth was written on his face. Kaya appeared beside him. I want you to know something. Whatever happens today, I don't regret any of it. Finding your cabin. Staying here. Fighting beside you. Kaya. Let me finish. Her voice cracked. You gave us something we'd never had before. A home. A family. Someone who saw us as people, not property. Even if we die today, that was worth everything. Nayeli nodded silently. Chenoa called out from across the room. She's right, Elijah. We wouldn't change a thing. Running Deer raised his good hand. For what it's worth, I'm glad I got to meet you, white man. You're not as terrible as most of your kind. Despite everything, Elijah laughed. It was a broken sound, rough with exhaustion and fear, but it was real. Thank you, all of you, for giving a lonely old man something to believe in again. He turned back to the window. Now let's make them pay for every inch. The final assault began at mid-morning. Harlan's men came from every direction. Not cautious this time, not probing. A full-scale charge designed to overwhelm by sheer numbers. Elijah fired until his barrel smoked. Kaya dropped 3 men before they reached the fence line. Nayeli held the back, picking off anyone who tried to flank. But there were too many. Far too many. A rider crashed through the front window. Elijah shot him at point-blank range. Another came through the back, then another. The cabin filled with smoke and screaming and the deafening crack of gunfire. Fall back, Elijah shouted. To the cellar. They retreated, dragging Running Deer between them. Chenoa slammed the cellar door shut and threw the bolt. In the darkness below, 5 people huddled together, listening to the sounds of destruction above them. This is it, Kaya whispered. They'll find the door. Break through. It's over. Elijah pulled her close. It's not over until we're dead, and we're not dead yet. But even as he said the words, he heard footsteps above. Heavy boots. Moving closer. The cellar door shuddered. Once. Twice. On the 3rd blow it began to splinter. And then from outside, a sound. Faint at first, then growing louder. Hoofbeats. Dozens of them. Shouting. Not Harlan's men. Different voices. Official voices. Federal marshals, drop your weapons. The pounding on the cellar door stopped. Above them, chaos erupted. Gunfire, screaming, the thunder of horses, then silence. A new voice called down. Elijah Cole, are you down there? Elijah's heart nearly stopped. James Tucker. That's Marshal Tucker to you, you stubborn fool. Now get up here. There's someone who wants to see you. Elijah pushed the splintered door open and climbed out. Standing in the wreckage of his cabin, surrounded by federal marshals with their guns still drawn, was Aiyana. She was covered in dust. Her clothes were torn. Her face was streaked with sweat and dirt. She was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. "Told you I'd come back," she said. And for the first time in 5 years, Elijah Cole broke down and cried. Elijah held Aiyana like she might disappear if he let go. Her arms wrapped around him just as tight. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them needed to. Around them, federal marshals rounded up what was left of Harlan's men. Some had fled. Some had surrendered. A few lay motionless where they'd fallen. Marshal James Tucker approached his badge, catching the morning light. "Hell of a mess you've gotten yourself into, Eli." Wasn't exactly planned. Elijah finally released Aiyana, but kept one hand on her arm, anchoring himself, proving she was real. "How'd you get here so fast?" "Your lady friend ran into my patrol 20 miles north, told us everything. We rode through the night." Tucker looked around at the destroyed cabin, the bullet holes, the blood. "Good thing we did." Aiyana touched Elijah's face. "You're hurt." He hadn't even noticed the gash on his forehead. The blood had dried into a dark line above his eye. "It's nothing." "It's not nothing." Her voice broke. "I thought I was too late. When I heard the gunfire from the ridge, I thought, you weren't too late. You saved us." From the cellar, Kaya's voice rang out. "Is it safe? Can we come up without getting shot?" Tucker holstered his weapon. "All clear, ma'am." One by one they emerged. Kaya, first rifle still in hand, eyes scanning for threats. Then Nayeli, calm as ever, despite the chaos. Then Chenoa and Running Deer, leaning on each other, both covered in blood that was mostly his. Chenoa saw Aiyana and burst into tears. "Sister!" The 4 women came together in a fierce embrace. Running Deer stood apart, swaying slightly, his face gray with exhaustion and blood loss. Elijah caught him before he fell. "Easy, son. Let's get you sitting down." "I'm fine." "You're about to pass out. There's a difference." He helped Running Deer to a fallen beam and eased him down. Nayeli was there, immediately checking his wounds with practiced hands. The shoulder wound reopened. He's lost too much blood. "Will he make it?" Nayeli looked up. For the first time since he'd known her, he saw fear in her eyes. "I don't know." Tucker stepped forward. "We've got a field medic with us, former Army surgeon, best in the territory. Get him, now." Tucker barked orders. Within minutes, a gray-haired man with steady hands was working on Running Deer, while Chenoa held his hand and whispered prayers in a language Elijah didn't understand. Aiyana appeared at his side. "What about Harlan?" The question hung in the air. Elijah looked around. Bodies, prisoners, but no black stallion, no cold smile. "Tucker, where's Harlan?" The marshal's jaw tightened. "We don't know. He wasn't among the dead or captured. Must have slipped away during the confusion." "He ran." Kaya's voice was bitter. "The coward ran. He won't get far. I've got men searching. He knows this land better than any of you." Elijah's hands balled into fists. "He's got money connections, places to hide. If he gets to Denver before you catch him, he'll buy his way out of this." "That's not going to happen. You can't promise that." Tucker met his eyes. Steady, honest. "No, I can't. But I can promise we'll try." It wasn't enough. Elijah knew it wasn't enough. But right now, with his cabin in ruins and his family barely alive, it was all he had. "Try hard," he said. "That man doesn't deserve to breathe free air." The medic worked on Running Deer for over an hour. Chenoa never left his side. She talked to him constantly, even when he drifted into unconsciousness, told him about the life they'd have together, the children, the home, the future that was waiting for them if he'd just hold on. He's stable. The medic finally sat back, wiping blood from his hands. Lost a lot of blood, but the wounds are clean. If infection doesn't set in, he should recover. Should. Chenoa's voice cracked. Medicine isn't certainty, miss. It's probability. And right now, probability is on his side. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Running Deer's eyes fluttered open. Chenoa. I'm here. She gripped his hand tighter. I'm right here. Did we win? We survived. That's better than winning. He managed a weak smile. Good enough for me. While the others tended to Running Deer, Tucker pulled Elijah aside. We need to talk about what comes next. What's to talk about? Harlan's men attacked us. We defended ourselves. Seems pretty clear. It's not that simple. Tucker lowered his voice. You've been harboring native women on your property. In the eyes of most folks around here, that makes you just as guilty as Harlan. Guilty of what saving lives. Guilty of consorting with the enemy, of betraying your race, of that's horseshit and you know it. I know it, you know it, but the people of Millbrook. Tucker shook his head. They're scared, Eli. Scared of natives, scared of change, scared of anything that doesn't fit their narrow little world, and scared people do stupid things. Elijah looked at Aiyana, at her sisters, at the young warrior who'd nearly died protecting them. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting you think about leaving, starting fresh somewhere else, somewhere people don't know your history. This is my land, my home. I'm not running. Even if staying gets you killed. Even then. Tucker sighed. You always were the most stubborn man I ever met. It's a gift. Despite everything, Tucker almost smiled. Fine. Stay. But don't say I didn't warn you. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Tucker's men helped clear the worst of the debris. They buried the dead Harlan's men and the few townspeople who'd joined the attack. 8 graves in total. 8 men who died trying to murder innocent people. Elijah felt nothing as he watched them lowered into the ground. These men had made their choice. They'd chosen hate. They'd chosen violence. And violence had answered them back. As the sun began to set, Aiyana found him standing by the graves. You're thinking about Margaret. It wasn't a question. I buried her not far from here, her and Sarah both. Just over that ridge. Do you want to show me? He hesitated. He'd never taken anyone to their graves. Not in 5 years. It felt too private, too sacred. But this was Aiyana, the woman who'd run through mountains to save his life. The woman who'd given him something to live for again. Yeah, he said quietly. I'd like that. They walked together as the sky turned orange and pink. 2 simple wooden crosses marked the graves. Elijah had carved them himself in the weeks after the funeral, when grief had made his hands shake so badly he'd cut himself a dozen times. Margaret Cole, beloved wife. Sarah Cole, beloved daughter. Aiyana knelt beside the graves. She didn't speak, didn't offer empty words of comfort. She just placed her hand on the cold earth and bowed her head. I used to come here every day, Elijah said. Talk to them. Tell them about the weather, the cattle, the stupid things Tom said in town. Pretended they could hear me. Maybe they could. You believe that? Aiyana looked up at him. I believe the people we love never truly leave us. They become part of who we are. Every choice we make, every breath we take, they're there, guiding us, protecting us. Elijah's throat tightened. I failed them. I wasn't here when they needed me. You were trying to save them. That's not failure, that's love. Love that came too late. Aiyana stood and took his hands in hers. Elijah Cole, look at me. He did. Her eyes were deep and dark and full of something that made his heart ache. You spent 5 years punishing yourself for something that wasn't your fault. 5 years believing you didn't deserve happiness. But then 4 strangers showed up on your doorstep and you opened your door anyway. You risked everything for people you'd never met. You gave us a home when the whole world wanted us dead." She squeezed his hands. "Does that sound like a man who failed? Or does that sound like a man who finally learned how to live again?" He couldn't answer. The words wouldn't come. So instead he pulled her close and held her as the sun disappeared behind the mountains. Night fell softly. Back at the ruined cabin, Tucker's men had set up camp. Fires burned. Sentries watched. For the first time in weeks, they were truly safe. The 4 sisters sat together near the largest fire. Chenoa had finally been convinced to leave Running Deer's side, though she kept glancing toward the tent where he slept. "What happens now?" she asked. Aiyana looked at Elijah. He looked back. "We rebuild," he said. "This cabin, this life, everything. All of us." Nayeli's voice was carefully neutral. "All of us, if you want to stay." Kaya snorted. "Like we have anywhere else to go." "That's not what I mean." Elijah sat down across from them. "I'm asking if you want to stay, not because you have no choice, but because this is where you want to be." The sisters exchanged glances. That silent communication they'd developed over years of hardship, of survival. Aiyana spoke first. "I want to stay." "Me too," Chenoa said immediately. Nayeli nodded. Kaya crossed her arms. "Someone has to keep you idiots out of trouble. Might as well be me." Elijah felt something loosen in his chest, something that had been wound tight for so long he'd forgotten it was there. Then it settled. "We stay. We rebuild. Together." "Together," the sisters echoed. And in the warmth of the firelight, surrounded by people who'd become family. Elijah Cole finally understood what it meant to come home. The next morning brought unexpected visitors. Tucker's sentry called out the warning just after dawn. Riders approaching from the south. A dozen of them, maybe more. Elijah grabbed his rifle and moved to intercept, but Tucker held up a hand. "Easy, I recognize them. That's Sheriff Burke from Millbrook." Sure enough, the old sheriff rode at the head of the group. Behind him came a mix of townspeople. Some of them Elijah recognized. The blacksmith, the general store owner, a few ranchers from the Eastern Valley. They stopped at the edge of the property. Burke dismounted slowly, his joints creaking with age. "Cole." "Sheriff, long way from town. Had to see for myself." Burke looked around at the destruction, at Tucker's men, at the 4 native women watching from the cabin's remains. "Heard what happened. Couldn't believe it at first." "Believe what exactly?" "That Jake Harlan finally went too far." Burke spat on the ground. "Always knew he was rotten. Never could prove it. And now I've got witness statements from half his men. Murder, arson, attempted massacre. Enough charges to hang him 10 times over." Burke's old eyes found Elijah's. "If we ever catch him." "Tucker's men are searching." "I know. Came to offer my help." Elijah's eyebrows rose. "Your help?" "Don't look so surprised. I may be old, but I'm not blind. What Harlan did was wrong. And what you did—" He glanced at the sisters again. "Took courage. More courage than most men have. I didn't do anything special. Just opened my door. Sometimes that's the hardest thing of all." Burke turned back to the group behind him. The blacksmith stepped forward. Then the store owner. One by one, they dismounted and approached. "We came to help rebuild," the blacksmith said. His voice was gruff, uncomfortable, but genuine. "Brought tools, supplies, whatever you need." Elijah stared at them. "Why?" "Because you're our neighbor." The store owner shuffled his feet. "And because some of us have been talking about how we treated native folks, about how maybe we weren't always right." "That's putting it mildly." "Yeah." The man couldn't meet Elijah's eyes. "It is. We're not asking for forgiveness, just a chance to do better." Elijah looked at Aiyana. She stood with her sisters watching the exchange with guarded expressions. "It's not my forgiveness you need," Elijah said. "It's theirs." The townspeople shifted uncomfortably. No one spoke. Then Aiyana stepped forward. "My people have a saying. The bird that sings after the storm is braver than the bird that sang before. You stayed silent when Harlan burned our fence, when he spread lies about us, when he gathered men to kill us." Her voice was steady, but her eyes burned. "But you're here now, after the storm. That takes courage. Maybe not as much courage as it should have taken before, but courage nonetheless." She paused. "We don't forgive easily. Trust is earned, not given. But we're willing to let you try." The blacksmith nodded slowly. "That's fair." "More than fair," the store owner added. And just like that, something shifted. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the beginning of something. The first crack in a wall that had stood for generations. Work began immediately. The townspeople were awkward at first, unsure how to interact with the women they'd been taught to fear. But Kaya had a way of breaking tension with blunt humor, and Nayeli's quiet competence earned respect. By midday, they were working side by side, former enemies, united by the simple act of building. Chenoa split her time between helping and watching over running deer. The young warrior's color was better today. He'd managed to eat some broth, drink some water. The medic said he was out of immediate danger. "He'll need weeks to fully recover," Nayeli told her. "Maybe months." "I'll wait." Chenoa's voice was firm. "However long it takes." "You really love him." "I always have, since we were children, even when they tried to beat it out of us. Even when they said we were cursed. I never stopped." Nayeli smiled softly. "That's what love is, little sister. Not giving up even when everything tells you to." As afternoon approached, Tucker found Elijah hammering boards onto what would become a new wall. "Got news." Elijah lowered his hammer. "Harlan?" "Not yet, but we found his trail, heading west toward the mountains. He's running scared." "Running toward what?" "That's the question." Tucker pulled out a map. "There's an old mining town about 40 miles west, abandoned years ago, but word is some outlaws have been using it as a hideout. If Harlan's got friends there, then he could regroup, come back." "That's what I'm thinking." Elijah's jaw tightened. "Then we need to stop him before he gets there." "My thoughts exactly. I'm taking a group out at first light. Wanted to know if you want to come." The question hung in the air. Elijah looked at the cabin, at the people working to rebuild it, at Aiyana, who'd paused her work and was watching him with knowing eyes. "I need to think about it." "Fair enough, but I'll need an answer by tonight." Tucker walked away. Elijah stared at the map still in his hand. 40 miles west. A dangerous ride. A chance to end this once and for all. Or a chance to lose everything he'd just found. That evening, he told Aiyana about Tucker's offer. They sat apart from the others near the graves of his wife and daughter. It felt right somehow, having this conversation here, in the presence of the past while deciding the future. "You want to go?" Aiyana said. Not a question. "Part of me does. Harlan hurt us, almost killed us. Part of me wants to see him pay." "And the other part?" Elijah was quiet for a moment. "The other part wants to stay here, with you, with your sisters, building something instead of destroying." Aiyana reached out and took his hand. "When my mother was dying, she told me something I've never forgotten. She said vengeance is a poison that tastes like medicine. It feels like it's healing you, but all it does is make you sick. You think I shouldn't go. I think you need to decide why you're going. If it's for justice, if it's to protect us from future harm, then go. But if it's for revenge, if it's to fill that hole inside you with someone else's blood..." She shook her head. "That won't heal you, Elijah. Nothing will except time and love." He stared at their joined hands, her fingers intertwined with his. brown skin against weathered white. Two people from different worlds bound together by circumstance and choice. "I'm scared," he admitted. "Not of Harlan, not of the fight. I'm scared of what I might become if I let this anger take over." "That fear proves you're still human." "Does it?" "Sometimes I'm not so sure." Aiyana moved closer, pressing against his side. "I'm sure. I've seen the man you are, Elijah Cole. The man who opened his door to strangers, who stood against an army for people he barely knew, who cried when I came back because he was so afraid he'd lost me." She lifted her free hand to his face, turning him to look at her. "That man isn't a monster. He's a miracle." Something broke inside him. Not in a painful way, more like ice cracking in spring, releasing what had been frozen for far too long. He leaned forward and pressed his forehead to hers. "I'll stay," he whispered. "God help me, I'll stay." "Are you sure?" "No, but I'm sure of you, and right now that's enough." They sat like that until the stars came out. Two broken people slowly becoming whole. Tucker left at dawn. Elijah watched the riders disappear over the ridge, a knot in his stomach he couldn't quite explain. "You made the right choice." Kaya appeared beside him, arms crossed. "Did I? Harlan's not worth your life, not worth leaving us." She paused. "Besides, if you'd gone and gotten yourself killed, I would have had to come dig up your body and yell at it. Seemed like a waste of energy." Despite everything, Elijah laughed. "Thanks, Kaya. That's very comforting." "I try." She walked away, leaving him alone with his thoughts. Behind him, the sounds of rebuilding continued. Hammers, saws, voices calling to each other, the sounds of life returning to a place that had almost become a grave. Elijah turned and walked back to join them. Whatever happened with Harlan, whatever the future held, this was where he belonged. Home. 3 days later, Tucker's message arrived. A rider came galloping down the road just after noon. Young kid barely old enough to shave, wearing a deputy's badge that looked too big for his chest. "Mr. Cole, message from Marshal Tucker." Elijah took the folded paper with shaking hands. Everyone gathered around as he read it aloud. "Caught up to Harlan 20 miles west of the abandoned mine. He refused to surrender. Tried to shoot his way out. One of my men wounded, but Harlan's dead. Found evidence at his camp linking him to 3 other murders in the territory. Justice served. Coming home. Tucker." Silence. Then Chenoa started crying. Then Kaya. Then Nayeli, though she tried to hide it. Aiyana looked at Elijah with tears streaming down her face. "It's over," she whispered. "It's really over." He pulled her into his arms. "Yeah," he said. "It is." Around them, the townspeople who'd come to help broke into cheers. Even the old sheriff cracked a smile. "Well," Burke said, "I'll be damned. Justice actually won for once." Running Deer, who'd insisted on being carried outside to hear the news, squeezed Chenoa's hand. "Now we can really start our lives." "What do you mean?" "I mean..." He looked at Elijah, then back at Chenoa. "I mean, I want to ask you something, properly, the way my grandmother taught me." Running Deer. He struggled to sit up straighter. "Chenoa of the Cheyenne people. I've loved you since we were children. I've crossed mountains for you. Nearly died for you. And I would do it all again 1,000 times over just for the chance to spend one day as your husband." His voice shook, but his eyes were steady. "Will you marry me?" Chenoa's face crumpled. "Yes," she sobbed. "Yes, yes, yes." More tears. More cheers. Even Kaya was smiling, though she pretended to be annoyed by all the emotion. And Elijah stood in the middle of it all, watching the family he'd almost lost, thinking about the future he'd almost given up on. Tucker was wrong about one thing. Justice hadn't just been served by catching Harlan. Justice was right here. In this moment. In these people who'd found each other against impossible odds and refused to let go. That was justice. That was love. That was home. Spring came to the valley like a promise finally kept. The cabin stood whole again, stronger than before, with an extra room added to the east side and a proper porch that wrapped around the front. Elijah had insisted on building it himself with help from the sisters and the townspeople who'd slowly become friends instead of strangers. 6 weeks had passed since Harlan's death. 6 weeks of healing, building, and learning what it meant to be a family. Running Deer was walking now. Slowly, with a limp, the medic said might never fully go away. But he walked. Every morning, he forced himself up and around the property, pushing through pain that would have broken lesser men. "You're going to hurt yourself," Chenoa said one morning, watching him struggle up the hill behind the cabin. "Already hurt. Can't get much worse." "That's not funny." "Wasn't trying to be." He stopped breathing hard and turned to face her. "I need to be strong again. For you. For the life we're building." "I don't need you strong. I need you alive." "Can't have one without the other." Chenoa grabbed his arm and pulled him to face her fully. "Listen to me, Running Deer. I watched you almost die. Twice. I held your hand when you were so cold, I thought you'd never be warm again. I prayed to every spirit I could name, begging them to let you stay with me." Her voice cracked. "So don't you dare push yourself into an early grave trying to prove something. You've already proved everything. Just by being here. Just by loving me enough to come find me." Running Deer's expression softened. "I'm sorry. I didn't think—" "No, you didn't." She released his arm, but she didn't step away. They stood there, close enough to share breath, close enough to feel each other's heartbeat. "I love you," he said quietly. "I've loved you since the first time I saw you. And I'll love you until the last breath leaves my body. Then take care of that body. For me." He smiled. That crooked, gentle smile that had made her heart flutter when they were children, and still made it flutter now. "Yes, ma'am." Inside the cabin, Kaya was teaching Elijah how to cook. It wasn't going well. "No, no, no." She grabbed the spoon from his hand. "You don't stir it like you're digging a grave, gentle. Slow, like you're petting a scared animal. It's stew. How much technique can there possibly be? Clearly more than you possess." Kaya took over her movements, practiced and precise. "My grandmother would have your hide if she saw what you were doing to those vegetables." "Your grandmother sounds terrifying." "She was, but she could cook like an angel." Kaya's voice softened. "She died when I was 12. Fever. Same thing that took half our village that winter." Elijah was quiet for a moment. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. She lived a full life. Saw all her grandchildren born. Taught us everything we know." Kaya added more herbs to the pot. "She used to say that cooking was love made visible. That every meal you prepare is a gift you give to the people you care about." "That's beautiful." "That's practical. Hard to fight on an empty stomach." She handed him the spoon. "Now try again. Gently." Elijah stirred. Gently. Kaya nodded approvingly. "Better. Maybe there's hope for you yet." Nayeli found Aiyana sitting by the creek, her feet dangling in the cold water. "You've been out here for hours." "I needed to think." Nayeli sat down beside her. The water rushed past, carrying the last of winter's ice toward the valley below. "About what?" "About everything. About what we've been through, what we've lost, what we've gained." Aiyana pulled her feet from the water and tucked them beneath her. "A year ago I was preparing to become the wife of a man I hated. Now I'm—" She stopped. "Now you're what—" I don't know how to finish that sentence. That's the problem. Nayeli was quiet for a moment. "You're in love with him." It wasn't a question. Aiyana closed her eyes. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to everyone with eyes." Nayeli smiled softly. "And ears. And basic observational skills. It's complicated. Why he loves you. You love him. What's complicated about that? He's white. I'm Cheyenne. The world doesn't just forget those things. The world doesn't get to decide who you love. Only you get to decide that." Aiyana looked at her sister. "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise. You just never listened." They both laughed. The sound carried across the water, bright and clear, and full of something that had been missing for a long time. Hope. "What should I do?" Aiyana asked. "What do you want to do?" "I want to stay here, build a life, have children someday, grow old with someone who sees me as a person, not a possession." "Then do that." "It's not that simple." "Actually, it is." Nayeli stood and offered her hand. "Come on, it's almost dinner. And I think there's someone who wants to talk to you." Back at the cabin, Elijah was waiting on the porch. Nayeli gave Aiyana a meaningful look and disappeared inside. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Aiyana walked up the steps and stood beside him. "Beautiful evening." "It is." Elijah's voice was rough, nervous. "Aiyana, I need to ask you something." "All right. I've been thinking. About us. About what happens next." He turned to face her. "These past weeks having you here, having your sisters running deer, it's the happiest I've been in 5 years. Maybe the happiest I've ever been." "Elijah." "Let me finish. Please." She nodded. "I know I'm old. I know I'm broken. I know the world looks at us and sees something wrong, something that shouldn't exist." He took her hands in his. "But I don't care what the world thinks. I stopped caring about that the night you showed up on my doorstep." His eyes found hers. "I love you, Aiyana. I love your strength, your courage, the way you'd walk through fire for the people you care about. I love the way you laugh when you think no one's listening, the way you hum that song your mother taught you when you're working." His voice cracked. "I love everything about you, and I want to spend whatever time I have left loving you more." Aiyana's heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her throat. "What are you asking me?" "I'm asking you to stay, not just as a guest, not just as family, as my wife." He pulled something from his pocket, a simple silver ring, worn and old but polished until it gleamed. "This was my grandmother's. She gave it to my mother on her wedding day, and my mother gave it to me when I married Margaret." He held it out. "I never thought I'd give it to anyone else. But here I am, asking a woman I met in a snowstorm to spend the rest of her life with a broken old rancher." Tears spilled down Aiyana's cheeks. "You're not broken." "Neither are you." She stared at the ring, at this man who'd given her everything, who'd risked his life, his home, his future for 4 strangers he owed nothing to. "Yes," she whispered. Elijah's breath caught. "Yes, yes." She laughed through her tears. "Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'll stay. Yes to everything." He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Then he kissed her. It was their first real kiss. Soft at first, tentative, then deeper, more certain. The kiss of 2 people who'd found each other against impossible odds and refused to let go. Inside the cabin, Kaya's voice rang out. "About damn time!" They broke apart laughing. "Privacy isn't really a concept around here, is it?" Elijah asked. "With 3 sisters, never." The door burst open. Chenoa flew out first, followed by Nayeli, then Kaya. Running Deer limped behind them, grinning despite the pain. "Did she say yes?" Chenoa demanded. Aiyana held up her hand, showing the ring. The sisters erupted into cheers. Chenoa hugged Aiyana so tight she could barely breathe. Kaya punched Elijah in the arm, then hugged him too. Even Nayeli, usually so reserved, was wiping tears from her eyes. "Welcome to the family," Running Deer said, clasping Elijah's hand. "Officially. I was already family. Now you're legally obligated to put up with us. Much worse." Elijah laughed. A real laugh. Full and free and unguarded. "I can live with that." They decided to have a double wedding. Chenoa and Running Deer. Aiyana and Elijah. 2 ceremonies, 1 celebration. The whole valley would be invited. "Are you sure about this?" Sheriff Burke asked when they told him. "A white man marrying a native woman, it'll cause talk." "Let them talk," Elijah said. "I've faced worse than gossip. And 2 couples in 1 ceremony. That's unusual. We're an unusual family." Burke shook his head, but he was smiling. "Fair enough. I'll spread the word." The preparations took 3 weeks. Aiyana and her sisters worked on dresses combining traditional Cheyenne designs with Western practicality. Kaya surprisingly turned out to be an excellent seamstress. Her grandmother's teachings extended beyond cooking, it seemed. "Hold still," Kaya muttered, pins between her teeth as she adjusted Aiyana's hem. "You fidget more than a rabbit." "I'm nervous." "About the wedding." "About everything. What if something goes wrong? What if people cause trouble? What if the sky falls? What if the mountains walk into the sea?" Kaya sat back on her heels. "Stop borrowing tomorrow's troubles. Today is good. Let it be good." Aiyana took a deep breath. "When did you become the calm one?" "I've always been calm." "You threw a pot at Elijah's head last week because he burned your bread." "That was justified rage. Completely different." Despite herself, Aiyana laughed. "I love you, Kaya." "I know. Now hold still." The day before the wedding, Marshal Tucker returned. He rode up to the cabin just as the sun was setting, his horse lathered and tired. Elijah met him on the porch. "Didn't expect to see you again so soon." "Had to deliver something." Tucker dismounted and pulled a document from his saddlebag. "Official deed. To Harlan's land. All of it." Elijah stared. "What?" "Harlan died without heirs. His property goes to the territory. Governor decided to award it to you as compensation for what you suffered." Tucker held out the paper. "Congratulations. You're now the biggest landowner in the valley." Elijah didn't take the deed. His mind was still processing. "The governor knows about us. About the sisters. He knows everything. I made sure of it." Tucker's expression was serious. "Wanted to make sure you'd be protected. Legally. If anyone tries to challenge your marriage or your family's right to live here, you've got the full weight of territorial law behind you." "Why would you do that?" "Because you reminded me why I became a lawman in the first place. To help people who can't help themselves. To stand up against bullies and tyrants." Tucker finally smiled. "And because you're my friend. Even if you are the most stubborn man I've ever met." Elijah took the deed. His hands were shaking. "Thank you, James. For everything. Just doing my job." Tucker swung back onto his horse. "Now I hear there's a wedding tomorrow. You'd better get some sleep." "Will you stay for the ceremony?" Tucker hesitated. Then he nodded. "Wouldn't miss it." The wedding day dawned clear and bright. Guests arrived from all over the valley. Townspeople who'd once feared native women now came bearing gifts. Ranchers who'd avoided Elijah for years stood beside him as friends. Even Tom, the drunk mail carrier, showed up sober and wearing his only good shirt. "Never thought I'd see this day," Burke muttered to Tucker as they watched the crowd gather. White folks and natives together, celebrating. "Times are changing. Not fast enough." "Never is. But change that matters never comes fast. It comes slow. One person at a time. One choice at a time." Burke considered this. "That's surprisingly profound for a federal marshal." "I have my moments." The ceremony took place on the hill overlooking Elijah's property. The same hill where Margaret and Sarah were buried. It felt right. Having them there. Bearing witness to this new beginning. Aiyana wore a dress of white deerskin decorated with beadwork her mother had made decades ago. Kaya had sewn it into the fabric herself, connecting past and present with every stitch. Chenoa wore something simpler, but no less beautiful. Running Deer couldn't stop staring at her. "Breathe," Elijah whispered to him. "You'll pass out if you don't." "I can't help it. She's the most beautiful woman I've ever seen." "She is. They both are." The ceremony was performed by Sheriff Burke, who'd gotten himself ordained years ago for exactly this kind of occasion. It blended traditions, both Cheyenne and Western, spoken in both languages by speakers who'd learned specially for this day. When it came time for vows, Aiyana spoke first. "Elijah Cole, I came to your door broken and dying. You gave me warmth, shelter, a reason to live. You fought for me when no one else would. You loved me when I thought I was unlovable." Her voice trembled. "I can't promise you a perfect life. I can't promise there won't be hard times ahead. But I can promise that whatever comes, I'll face it beside you. As your partner, your friend, your wife." She took his hands. "I choose you. Today, tomorrow, always." Elijah's eyes glistened. "Aiyana, when you showed up on my doorstep, I was a dead man walking. I'd given up on everything. On life, on love, on the future. Then you appeared, and everything changed." He squeezed her hands. "You gave me something to live for. You and your sisters. This family we've built together. I spent 5 years mourning what I lost. Now I want to spend the rest of my life celebrating what I've found." His voice broke. "I love you, more than I thought I could ever love anyone again. And I will spend every day of our lives together proving that you made the right choice by saying yes." Burke cleared his throat. "Well, I think we can skip the rest of the formalities." He looked at both couples. "By the power vested in me by Colorado territory, I now pronounce you married, all 4 of you. You may kiss your partners." Elijah pulled Aiyana into his arms. Running Deer did the same with Chenoa. The crowd erupted into cheers. Kaya and Nayeli stood together, watching their sisters find happiness. "Do you think it'll last?" Kaya asked quietly. "What? This? The peace? The acceptance? Or will people go back to hating us the moment something goes wrong?" Nayeli was quiet for a moment. "I don't know. Maybe. Probably." She turned to look at her sister. "But does it matter? Right now, in this moment, we're happy. We're together. We have a home. Isn't that enough?" Kaya watched Aiyana laughing in Elijah's arms, watched Chenoa crying happy tears as Running Deer spun her in circles. "Yeah," she said softly. "It's enough." The celebration lasted until well after dark. There was food more than anyone could eat. Music played on instruments borrowed from 3 different cultures. Dancing, some traditional, some invented on the spot. Tucker caught Elijah during a quiet moment. "Happy. More than I have words for." "Good. You deserve it." Tucker paused. "I have to leave in the morning. Duty calls." "I understand. But I'll be back. Whenever I can. This place." He looked around at the celebration at the family Elijah had built. "It feels like something important, something worth protecting." "It is." "Then protect it. No matter what." Elijah clasped his friend's hand. "I will." As the night deepened, the celebration slowly wound down. Guests departed with full bellies and warm wishes. The townspeople who'd helped rebuild stayed to help clean up. Even in the aftermath of joy, they found ways to contribute. Finally, only family remained. Elijah and Aiyana, Chenoa and Running Deer, Kaya and Nayeli. 6 people who'd started as strangers and become something stronger than blood could ever make them. They sat together on the porch, watching the stars emerge one by one. "What happens now?" Chenoa asked. Her head rested on Running Deer's shoulder. Her hand lay across her stomach, protective and hopeful. "Now we live," Aiyana said. "We build, we grow, we become everything they told us we couldn't be." "That sounds like a lot of work," Kaya grumbled. But she was smiling. The best things usually are. Elijah pulled Aiyana closer. "You know what I keep thinking about?" "What?" "That night. The blizzard. The knock on my door." He shook his head slowly. "If the storm had been any weaker, you might have kept going. If I'd hesitated one more second, you might have frozen. 100 tiny things had to go exactly right for us to end up here." "My people would call that destiny," Running Deer said. "Mine would call it miracle," Nayeli added. "I call it luck," Kaya said. "Stupid, impossible, wonderful luck." Elijah laughed. "I'll take any of those." Aiyana turned in his arms to face him. "It doesn't matter what we call it. What matters is what we do with it." She pressed a kiss to his cheek. "We were given a second chance. All of us. Now we have to earn it." "How do we do that?" "By living well, loving fiercely, never forgetting how close we came to losing everything." She looked at each of them in turn. Her sisters, her family, her home. "We were thrown away by the people who should have protected us, treated like we were worthless, like we didn't deserve to exist." Her voice grew stronger. "But we're still here. We survived. We found each other. And now we get to prove them wrong, every single day." "To proving them wrong," Kaya raised an imaginary glass. "To family," Chenoa added. "To love," Running Deer said. "To second chances," Nayeli finished. Elijah looked at Aiyana, at this woman who'd walked through a blizzard and straight into his heart. "To all of it," he said, "and to whatever comes next." They sat together in the starlight, 6 survivors who'd built something beautiful from the ashes of everything they'd lost. 3 months later, Chenoa gave birth to a daughter. They named her Hope. 6 months after that, Aiyana announced she was pregnant too. And Elijah Cole, the man who'd spent 5 years waiting to die, discovered something he'd forgotten was possible. The future. It stretched out before him now, full of possibilities he'd never dared to imagine. Children running through fields of green. Grandchildren learning the stories of how their family came to be. Generations of love built on a foundation of courage and kindness and the simple act of opening a door to strangers in need. He thought about Margaret and Sarah sometimes, visited their graves on quiet mornings, told them about his new life, his new family, his new hope. He liked to think they'd be happy for him. He liked to think they'd be proud. On the last warm evening before winter returned, Elijah stood on his porch and looked out at everything they'd built. The expanded cabin, the thriving ranch, the community that had grown around them, the family that filled every room with laughter and love. Aiyana appeared beside him, her hand resting on her swelling belly. "What are you thinking about?" "Everything. Nothing." He pulled her close. "How different my life is from what I thought it would be." "Better or worse?" "Better. 1,000 times better." He kissed the top of her head. "I was so certain I knew what my future held. Loss. Loneliness. A slow fade into nothing. And then you came along and proved me wrong about everything. I didn't do anything special. I just knocked on a door. You did more than that. You reminded me that kindness matters, that love is always worth the risk, that family isn't about blood, it's about choice." He turned her to face him. "I choose you, Aiyana Cole, every day, for the rest of my life. And I choose you, Elijah, always." They stood together as the sun set, 2 people who'd found each other in a storm and built something that would last forever. Behind them in the cabin that had become home, their family waited. Chenoa singing softly to baby Hope. Running Deer whittling a toy horse. Kaya arguing with Nayeli about something unimportant, the sounds of life, of love, of belonging. Elijah Cole had spent 5 years believing he had nothing left to live for. He'd been wrong. He had everything. My dear friends, thank you for staying with me through this entire journey. This story has traveled from the frozen despair of a blizzard to the warm embrace of family, from loneliness to love, from death to rebirth. Remember this: no matter how cold your winter, no matter how dark your night, there is always a door waiting to open. There is always someone who will see you, not as the world sees you, but as you truly are. Family is not where you are born. Family is where no one leaves you behind. I love you, my faithful listeners of Wild West Storytelling. Type the word hope in the comments if this story touched your heart. And remember, no storm lasts forever. Until next time.